Hello and welcome to Season 4 of the Sunday Podcast, presented by sportsshoes.com. I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
This podcast is all about elite distance running in the UK.
We're here to give you all the latest news updates around the sport,
as well as weekly interviews with athletes and coaches.
Stay up to date by following us on Instagram and X at Sunday Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, where we post athlete workout videos, shoe reviews and more.
Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, welcome back to another episode. I know we always say this, but another fantastic guest on this week later on. Barry Fudge, kind enough to speak to us about kind of some of the experiences he had when he was working with British Athletics and of course alongside Mo Farah. So we'll get into that one later on. But Matt, we've got plenty to talk about first of all, don't we, mate? We've obviously the Euro team, pre-classic, feels like it was weeks ago already, but we haven't actually kind of spoken about it. And then plenty to look forward to too.
Oh, mate, it's been this weekend. I mean, I thought last weekend was mega just for the amount of races that were going down. We saw all the results in, obviously at pre-classic, but then at meets like Belgium, I think I saw 67 men break 14 minutes in Belgium in IFAM. I just thought, Jesus, that meet is off the charts and pretty sure. And obviously we saw a load of fast 15 times and all else come from it, but pretty sure that used to be a one-day meet, like an evening meet. And I just think it's so popular now and there's so many entries and that they've stretched it out over 2 days. So I think they had the 5K and the steeple on some nights, and then all the middle distance events on the kind of following night as well. Probably best to mention Westie's 1309 there, and stuff like that. So I thought last weekend was just mega. There was so much going on. There were times popping up from all over the place, and this weekend seems to be, and this week in the sport seems to be no different. And especially, I mean, let's get into it then. That Euros team being announced. I guess a few surprises that we can discuss. I wouldn't say surprises. I mean, it was always going to be tricky to pick this team. We knew there would be a little bit of drama because obviously there was no trials for it, and they wanted to take a relatively smaller team. I think maybe limiting it to sort of 70 athletes or so. So it was always going to be quite tricky to get selected for it. So those on the fence. But and then again, you've got like the top dogs who don't want to do it. Want to just focus on Paris.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think it's always difficult to look into these teams from the outside, unless you've got an athlete who's come out and said, for example, I put myself forward and I wasn't selected. It's hard to know who was actually kind of had their name in the hat for some of these events. So we can only really kind of, unless athletes have done that, we can only really predict who was kind of saying, yes, I'm in, no, I'm not, for example. But on the whole, mate, it's, well, first of all, it's a very strong team. But on the whole, it looks pretty fair from some recent races anyway.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we've distance-wise, we've got some stacked events in there. To be honest with you, some very, very strong events, women's and men's side, and we can't complain really. The way things have been moving. I guess like for me, a talking point would be Phoebe Gill in the 800. I mean, just how much she is in form right now. Obviously, she actually came out and said she didn't want to do it. She's got exams to focus on. Obviously, I guess as fans of the sport, we understand that. We understand she's so young. For me, though, I genuinely think she should have gone. She should have done it. I think we've seen time and time again people, and it's people who kind of like will put off. I guess they'll be patient and wait for more opportunities, and I know she will get more opportunities. I'm 100% certain of that. But just thinking ahead to Paris, like actually, I know she's a phenomenal junior, but to put yourself in a senior setting at the Euros alongside the likes of Keely and how experienced she is and what you could learn, I think that would be invaluable. And I think I don't know, personally, I think she might have been better off going to the Euros, getting that experience, and then obviously when she comes to Paris, it's not so overwhelming. I mean, we've seen the step up it is for some people when they go to Olympic Games, especially when you're sort of like 17 and it's not like she's competing on diamond leagues regularly either, so she's getting that experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was the one that I thought. So it's a tough decision though, isn't it? Because like you say, when you are so young, and also I think just having probably not expected to run as quick as she has. I'm sure she knew she was kind of in good shape coming into the season, but in terms of your preparation, like if you kind of went into like school or whatever in September thinking I'm
Yeah.
targeting the European champs, for example, you might have a few more things in place to be able to go and do like kind of navigate that a bit better, for example. But
Mm.
when it's
Mm.
kind of all come in the past couple months, very difficult to navigate that period of your life, I think.
100%, mate. I think you're bang on. And so I do think, being a little bit cautious, playing it safe, maybe it will come good. But the form she's in, I mean, just talk about that BMC last week,
Mm,
54.9. Let's call it 55 flat, like halfway. I don't know if there's many women in the world who can do that and actually hold it together on the last lap. And not only hold it together on the last lap, be out front. There wasn't even any competition for her to battle with over that last lap, and she held on. And the last 50 was giving me kind of Max Bergen vibes at British Champs last year. I thought her legs were going to give in, but flipping
mm.
hell, she is just, yeah, a super talent and fearless. And it seems like she likes to run her races that way as well. But when you just look at the British Champs team as well, like going to Paris, like I know she wants to focus on that, but for me, that's not a given. You think you've got Keely, you've got Riki, and then you've got all those women kind of piling behind 159, which are going to make for a very messy, very crowded 800 race. That British Champs field is often inseparable. You can throw a blanket over it. So,
Mm.
you've got Bell, you've got Wallace, you've got, Boffy, you've got, Kai Malanga, all these extras that kind of come into the equation.
Yeah, it's a super competitive field. Obviously, don't forget people like Ellie Baker. I'm sure we've forgotten someone else as well
I'm
in
sure
there.
we have, but
But yeah, and what I would say is obviously Alex Bell, Aaron Wallace getting the opportunity to go to Euros now because Riki's doing a 15.
yeah.
Phoebe Gill's not wanting to do it. You think they would be the three that you'd go for based purely off kind of
Mm.
form right now. No disrespect to those athletes, but now they're getting the opportunity to go to Euros, really sharpen up ahead of British champs. Like you can start navigating the rounds at European champs. You're going to have so much confidence going into British champs, coming off the back of it.
Yeah, 100%. I actually think it's the best thing for an athlete right now in the middle distance, like those sorts of athletes, it's the best thing for them because look, you can continue to chase times going into champs, but chasing times isn't going to help you come champs,
Mm.
like and actually just
Well, if you
honing
got
in
the
on that.
time, you got the time. Like you don't
Exactly.
need it
Yeah,
now.
there's no need to kind of carry on trying to better that time. Just go and go and prove you can do it in a race. So yeah, I feel like for those girls, that's gonna bring them on a heap. And yeah, so and then yeah, the women's 15, I mean, Bell, Riki, and Snowden, that is a class team. Again, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, in the women's eight, I think obviously you're going to go for Keeley for the win, but we could see a couple medals in that women's 15. I mean, Snowden and Riki, I think, are second and third on
Mm.
the sort of rankings, those who are doing it, and Georgia Bell sort of in sixth. So yeah, we could sweep some serious medals in
Yeah,
that one.
I think it's a really smart move from Riki, and obviously a coach as well to kind of go for the 15 here. I think obviously someone that used to be very much probably a 15-8 runner, who kind of
Uh,
transitioned into being almost a
pure eight.
pure 800 runner. We don't see her much on a 15 anymore, but I think this will be great for her this time of year, to kind of go in. Like if she can come away with a European medal over 1500 meters, again going into British champs and going into the Olympics, I think she definitely believes she can go and convert that.
100%. And in women's five, what is he? Fry, Eloise Neal, and Amy Eloise Neal and Hannah Nuttall. So again, very, very solid team. I mean, Nuttall's the best at the moment. Well, run the fastest at the moment. She sits in about sixth on the rankings. But I mean, we saw that Marine Costa run fast in the 3000 last night in Oslo. Grovdal as well. Got Batacletti. So yeah, some serious people ahead of her. Klosterhalfen if she does it. So whether she can sneak onto the podium would be interesting. I think with both the men's and the women's five, it being a straight final, does kind of lead itself to some interesting results. Potentially might make it more tactical, or the opposite might just make it faster. So I'll be intrigued to see how they play out. And then yeah, women's 10, we've got Megan Keith, Elish McColgan, and Jess Wanajard. I thought, McKeith's going to have to, by the time Paris rolls around, she's going to done multiple fives and multiple tens. She's a machine.
Mm.
She's not slowing down anytime soon. I was
Yeah, and
surprised that she
obviously
was going for the 10 in, to be honest with you, at Euros, but I think that's her best medal chance. She might look at it in that sense.
definitely, and it goes back to that conversation we had earlier. Obviously, Keith's someone that you could say maybe she's at the level now where she could save herself, run a different event at the Euros, but actually, she's still a young athlete. You're at your best 10K shape right now. Cash in, get that European medal.
Yeah, yeah,
So at the end of the day, like, is she going to medal in the Olympics? No.
no,
So why not do your best event now and then just see what happens, kind of moving forward from there. I'm not saying she can't run really well and be really competitive in Paris, but yeah, her best shot this season of some hardware is definitely Europeans, and definitely over that 10K. So yeah, I think wise move from her. All it's going to do is bring her on. McColgan, obviously, we saw her back for the first time in a long time the other day. She ran a road 5K. I think she ran 15:19, or something around there, 15 teens.
mm,
So won the race. Doesn't really tell us much, to be honest, in
mm.
terms of Eilish, but she's back competing. She's going to be back on the track in a GB vest, and that's where we'll see kind of what she's made of going into the rest of the summer.
Yeah, yeah, she needs a big performance, I guess, something to build on as well, going forward. Obviously, we know how good she is, and she's already got those standards ticked off. But yeah, I mean, just on that women's 10, and we've got three in the top five going into it as well. You know, McColgan ranked one, Megan Keith ranked two, got a Dutch girl, Vanessa in three, and Batacletti in four, and then just Warner Judd's ranked five. So couldn't even see a one, two, three sweep.
Mm.
Um, obviously talking about Jess Judd, you know, we saw a not emotional interview with her last night after Oslo, but yeah, something's just not clicking. Um, so it's just not happening for her at the moment. Whether she's I'm sure she's training well. I've heard she's training very, very well. But yeah, performances just don't seem to be clicking on the track yet. But we kind of know Judd, and I think she can pull it together at the right time when it counts. And so maybe it's a bit of a blessing because even now, and performances aren't clicking, she's still running well enough to kind of get selected for Paris.
Well, that's what I was going to say, mate. Like, it's a very very good thing when like you're not clicking is running like A59 in a Diamond League or coming second Brit at Highgate. You know, that's a good position to be in where it's not clicking, but actually you're in the Euros team for next week. You're still running decent, and that means that you're not so far out of touch that it's just not going to happen this year. You're probably at a point where actually maybe it's, I don't know, who knows? Maybe it's just kind of a bit of a confidence boost at Europeans next week, like just a little sniff at medal chance, for example, and then we see the Jess Judd that we know, and the Jess Judd that we've seen over the past few years is just kind of improving year on year. So
Yeah, I think that's all it takes, you know, just one performance to get under her
mm,
belt, just to kind of build off and gain a bit of confidence from. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all the women going to Rome. Lizzie Bird goes in the steeple as well. So for her as well, I think she's just getting her season. She said a couple run outs, but getting her season fire and getting her going. We want to see the Lizzie Bird we saw in 2022, to be honest with you. So yeah, she's got a good chance as well, kind of really getting up there, top five out there in Rome. And then we move on to the men's eight. We've got Giles, we've got Callum Dodds and Randolph. And Callum Dodds has kind of been the man that I guess the breakthrough star of the 800 this year.
mm.
He's always been talented, and you've only got to look at him run to see like, yeah, this guy could do something serious. Obviously, Yates working with him, doing a great job and been rewarded. So to go to Euros and look, I remember he's kind of giving me Elliot Giles vibes in 2016 when Giles kind of made the Euros team, not unexpected, but kind of snuck onto that Euros team
Mm.
under the radar, gets a bronze medal, which, by the way, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that's the only kind of European or global medal that Giles has ever seen. And that was back in 2016. So could argue the best version of Giles race-wise was then. And then obviously he went on to Rio and it just completely catapulted his career. And
Mm.
so, you know, not to say Dodds is going to do that, but it's, you know, the way he's kind of performing this year, he's building momentum and he is looking good in these races. So And he's coached by Yates, which is kind of yeah, the full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously on Giles, I'm sure we'll get into Oslo in a bit as well properly, but obviously just around that fantastic 1500 meters. 1500 meters last night beat Mills in 3:31. So and he's obviously going in the 5K. So both of them opt in for slightly different distances at Euros. I think it's probably a wise move. I think Giles is still his best event still the 800 in terms of well, definitely in terms of guaranteeing his place on a British team. Like you mentioned, catapulting his career, that's something he has been fantastic at since that 2016. Like if you're going to put money on someone making a British team over 800 meters, you're putting your money on Giles, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say so. Even now, you look at everyone kind of running 144. I mean, again, there was a really high quality meet in Marseille last week, and he won there. You know, he came out on top there, and I think he's showing that he can win these eights, these 15s. I mean, in his interview and stuff, like he was really happy, rightly so, 331. But look, me and 331 is not that special anymore.
Mm.
And you've just got to look at it as well. He was fifth in that race. You got a Portuguese guy, you got Habs ahead of him, you got Chariot, you got Ingebrigtsen, but this isn't it. We're not even talking about, Kerr, Whiteman. You've got Americans that, Nagoose, these Americans could come in. So actually, when you start to add in like a global field and add these guys in, that
You're
performance
not making a
probably,
final.
no, that
You're
performance isn't
struggling to get
top.
out of the heat.
It's not a top 12 in the world.
Mm.
Now, he is someone who will get faster and get fitter and he's been there. He's made global finals. Like I think he can do it, in Paris, but I'm just saying like there's a level and I think these guys running 331, 332, they're not on the same level as the likes of I mean, and that's obvious, the likes of Jakob, Chariot,
Yeah.
Nagoose and Whiteman as well will get to that level as well. So and I think there is a bit of a grey area as well. Like Mills as well, actually, like as good as he is, 331.5, and as good as that time is, that's actually and but finishing seventh in a Diamond League, in like not it's not a stacked Diamond League by any means. You could argue, I mean, Nordas and McSwain were in there. They both had
Mm.
stinkers. Um, but yeah, it's quite far down, and you think you got all the other people to add in there as well. And that's a race that it's on the rail. You've got the pace lights. I was expecting a little bit more from Mills, but then again, he hasn't raced in a while, and he's just coming out of, he's getting his season rolling, and we're going to see him at Euros in the five. And yeah, I feel like for the British team, he does want a double, but for the British team, just making that team, and obviously more rumors on that. Apparently, Kerr is going to do the eight similar to what he did last year, so it is just going to be top two at British champs. And when
I
you've
do think
got
that makes it easier for some of the other guys, though, in a way.
no way.
Well, because it would have been top three before. So then you say Kerr gets the win. What I mean is by that is Kerr's no longer controlling the race at British champs. So
I think
in
that's
that
easier. I no, but I actually think that's easier for them. When you've got a
really,
big player, it's like it's the same. You see it in Diamond Leagues. It's easy for these guys when the big players stamp their authority, the Jakobs, the Cherries. They don't have to think; they just follow. But
yeah,
actually,
and
British
what I'm saying
Championship,
is, I think when that happens, right, if Kerr stamps his authority, Wyman comes second, Gawley comes third. Whereas without Kerr in there, it opens everyone up for a shot.
yeah. But it also means that the likes of Giles, Mills, even throwing people like Adam Fogg and stuff, they really have to think and they have to go right. How am I gonna
Mm.
get top two here? And that's when
But I think
I
they have a
think,
chance, whereas I don't think they have a chance otherwise because Kerr, even if he leaves it late,
yeah,
he kicks from far enough out that the fittest guys come in
that's gonna
second and
move
third
it. Yeah,
behind it.
yeah.
So I think it actually I think it gives Mills a shot. I think it gives Giles a real shot.
It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off for some of them, and then for some of them, it's going to, yeah, like you
Hmm.
said, be a negative, and they're going to. Typically, it's probably going to be the ones who have to kind of try and make something of the race, and I guess and try and shoot for it the earliest, and who's just
Mm.
got the
And does
biggest
Wyman feel
patience.
the pressure then? Does Wyman feel the
So,
pressure to actually be the guy? And I know he's been there before and been the guy, but does he feel like actually coming off his injury? I think it was quite nice that he's been coming off his injury this year but everyone's talking about
Kerr's
Kerr.
been doing, yeah.
Whereas you go into that, it's like, does he feel like he has to take it on with 600 to
Well,
go? You
mate,
know, like,
again, yeah, you know what it's like when, let's say you're kicking for the win and someone like Gawley comes charging past because he's just
mm,
had a comfortable ride, and then you've got all these other guys. Then you're there to be attacked, aren't you, on the home straight, and you're tying up. It's just, I actually think it makes for a fascinating matchup for those spots, and hopefully, it will just be two past the post, and that will be it. But yeah,
what
again, we
happens if
know.
Kerr makes the 800 team?
I mean, the men's 800 is stacked at the moment. I would like to see
Mm,
Kerr run a little bit quicker. I would like to see Kerr get into the 144s and maybe even faster. I know he doesn't have to. He's already showing that. I mean, and by the way, pre last week, he's yeah, that man is just in the shape of his life. For me, he's clearly the best in the world right
mm,
now. He's dominant as well. Like he
yeah.
dominated. I know the winning margin wasn't huge, but he did dominate, and I think he's got more to give. Um, yeah. So, but like, yeah, I guess I would like to see him be able to go run like a 143 high. Like, surely that's not out of someone's reach like him.
Mm. You think so? And I mean, we'll get into that pre-race in a bit, won't we? We'll just carry on rattling through this British team. So obviously, as we said, yeah, Giles, Randolph, and Dodds in the 800. Into the 15, someone we did just mention, Gawley, and then Adam Fogg's in there as well. Someone who's been kind of on the outskirts after coming back from the NCAA, and obviously based out in America, and he's making his teams now. Like, what's that? Did he do a Eurocross relay? Am I right in saying? And an indoor team, world indoors, and
Yeah.
now on a European team. So it's a really good pathway to be on. Kind of making these not minor teams. That's not the phrase I'm looking for, but these almost secondary teams or kind of reserve teams. I don't know how you want to phrase it. But
No,
ready to
this is
kind
no,
of
no, no.
catapult you into a major.
Yeah, Euros is a legit team. A very,
I
very
mean,
legit team. So,
it is. Mm,
but this year, all you're trying to say is this year, obviously, there is a bit of a gap. I mean, we're only taking two guys for a start, and I think again that's a bit of a shame in an event like a
mm,
1500 where we are so dominant in the world right now. I would have liked to see more guys line up, but then again, who's available? Kerr, Giles, Mills, and Stonier, and I think Stonier is injured again, and Whiteman, and those are kind of your guys available. And I think the only other person available was Westy and Callum Olsen as well, but obviously Elson's injured. So actually, to be fair, we couldn't really take three guys when you kind of go through it and discount all the guys that
Yeah, I
we
don't
could have
think
taken.
anyone who had the standard was not picked.
No, 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 no,
So,
no, no.
but that's what I mean. Like, it's obviously Europeans is a legit competition, fine, but it's not a world or Olympic like major, as if you call it. And looking at our team, it's obviously not our strongest 1500 team on paper. So I just mean
But
it's a
this
great
is where
opportunity for
again,
Fogdog.
like, yeah, it's going to be a big one for Fog Dog. I mean, he's ranked 20. I think he's ranked 22nd. But as we know, in the 1500, so many guys are within a second of each other. I think he's a 334 man. You bump up to 332, and you're virtually in the top sort of 10. I think so. You hop 10 places or so. But this is where I just like got to give credit to Jakob is the fact that he is going to turn up at the European Championships and he's going to win it or try to win it for the I don't know how many times.
Mm.
And
But he
yeah,
needs to, because otherwise he's not getting a gold this year. So like it's quite different to previous years, isn't it?
but it is a surprise. Like I don't know how many people who are at his level. You've got Keeley in the 800. I feel like 800s are a little bit easier to kind of do more of and go to major championships and knock them out as well. But and I've got to give credit to Keely as well. She doesn't turn anything down. That girl hasn't missed a major. She doesn't, play the long game like we're seeing with a lot of athletes. And this being so close to not only the Olympics, but Keely's may have to double back at the British champs. Pretty sure she might do the 400 there, but we'll see. If she wins Euros, I think that'll be enough. But
Mm.
again, these people are going to have to prove themselves beforehand. So I do respect that and respect that they're toeing the line. So and Yaka was
Yeah,
making a few
but
pops at
but but
Curl
quite
last week.
yeah, quite rightly so. I think like apart from Kerr, like current world champ, not really an excuse, is there?
No, but obviously we know the difficulties of making that Paris team and that being the
Mm.
focus. So, but in the men's, yeah, so in the men's 15, obviously Gawley and Fogg and looking at Gawley at pre, I think people ahead of him are like Nordas, Koska, and Garcia Romo. He can beat all those guys. Niels Lauris is going to be interesting to see how he runs. Haven't really seen him compete yet, so how he kind of gets his season going. Obviously terrific season last year. He's building on that as well. So can't wait to see what Laris can do. But yeah, and then so for me, it is going to be, maybe a rerun of that European indoors a few years ago, Gaulian and Jakob and maybe throw Laris into the equation. But you got the Portuguese lad Nadir who's running very well as well. So it's your kind of men's 1500, men's five, Mills, Rowe, and Westy.
Yeah, it's a good
Nice
team,
team.
isn't it? And it's also
Nice
it's
team.
quite a like not developmental team, but it's like a new crop of 5,000 meter runners, isn't it? Like all three of them, definitely Westy and Rowe are people that kind of in previous years you've been like actually they're kind of the top guys by your I don't know your Mark Scotts, your boot charts, for example. But now they're actually kind of walking a walk and running the times as well to back up their kind of British champs medals or good performances on the cross country or whatever it is. And now they're putting themselves in the arena where they're actually getting the opportunity to run a European champ. So it's brilliant to see. Obviously, Westy's run the other night, like fantastic because he's someone that we know he's got the finishing kick. We know he's got that kind of, I guess that kind of winning mentality about him. Like he's kind of punched above his weight at British champs
Mm.
and
Mm.
taken out guys with much better PBs than him. But now he's got the time to kind of back that up and get him into the champs. So really good to see it. And I don't know, like out of them guys, like you put Mills in there as well. He's another one who fabulous time, but also 1500 meter background. Like you got to think he's got to be finishing fast as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be great to see Rowe run. Haven't seen him run for a little while now. Um, Yeah, he did. We know he opened his season with what, a 338 a couple of weeks ago in the 1500. That was PB for him. And obviously he's going to get rolling at Euros. So, but the Euros 5K is stacked, to be fair. Obviously you've got Mills, but Gressier, who's in fine form, he just ran a 12:54. The Spaniard Thierry and Duku Menyayo, what he ran 12:48 or something last night in Oslo. And obviously you got Jakob, Brian Fay. John Heymans and you've got people like Nordas, Dominic Labalu, who's now, officially a Swiss athlete. And he ran 12:50 in Oslo. And then you've got Westy. Said the field is you've got about 6 or 7 guys who have broken 13 minutes, which is
Mm-hmm.
one of the strongest European fields that we've ever seen, if not the strongest, obviously. So it's going to be a great race. What I love about both 5K, as I said earlier, is they're just straight finals. So I just feel like, they can be fast, competitive, and I think for a lot of people as well. I know like people like Rowe have the qualifying standard, but West is fast enough. I don't know if it will be sub 13:05, but there's a small chance it might be. There's some, when you've got a number of people who have run sub 13 minutes and you've got Jakob in the race and they might move it along. It might be a 13 flat race. I don't know, but I doubt it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, isn't it? It depends who in there wants to kind of take it on, doesn't it? Because I think like we always say, everyone always backs their kick, don't they? And let's be honest, like with Jakob in there, they're all thinking, how do I get a medal here? They're not thinking, how do I win? So
Well, what I would say is there's a lot of guys in the field. The only reason I say that is because there is a lot of guys who have run like 13, 14, 13, 13, 13. You've got Robin Hendricks who won the Eurocross. You've got, got bronze at the Eurocross. You've got people like Adel Machau. You've got Henrik Ingebrigtsen, who's like 13, 13. Jonas Rees, you got a Swedish guy. So actually, inside, you've got 23 men, or ranked 23 as a 13, 15 runner. So you have got quite a few people who maybe might look at that 13:05 standard and might just be like, let's give it a crack. We haven't got too many
mm,
opportunities to go again. And look, you're gonna have the atmosphere, you're gonna have a great track, a great stadium, you're probably gonna have the weather. So that if this, all I'm saying is if this was a race set up on the world on like a European tour, and this was on a night in Belgium or France somewhere on an evening, these men would smash it and they would take it out and they would have no fear of running 13:05, and it would be a perfect race to do so. You look at the depth. So uh, there is the depth there to do it. We know things change. And especially in a championship, people tend to, I guess, some overperform and some underperform as well. So it's a little bit harder but to judge. But yeah, there is low key a semi opportunity. And I think someone like Westy will be hoping for that.
Yeah, I think so. And if you go off at 13:15 pace, the way they're going to be closing kind of
And
the
you
last
kit,
K,
yep.
yeah, you don't have to go off at 13:05, and maybe it's better than some of these pace races that they do. Like we spoke about this. When did we speak about this? A couple of weeks ago, maybe, like talking about how actually sometimes these wave lights just being right on the pace is not conducive for fast running all the time, because people are just like spending themselves in the first couple Ks. Whereas actually, if this race is like an even split 13
Yeah.
15 pace, and then they get rolling last K, then maybe that's the perfect way to do
Well,
it.
it's bang on. It's like in the 5K yesterday, the wave lights were getting quicker and quicker in that amazing 5K in Oslo. And their kilometers basically they were 2:33s, and then I think the fourth was a 2:30 or close to,
Mm.
and then a 2:25 to finish. And their kilometers got quicker and quicker throughout. And yeah, you're dead right. When they set those wave lights, they just go, we're just gonna hit 62s or whatever 13 flat is, and they just set off at that, whereas they're probably better at going sort of 63s and just winding it up throughout. So I do think it will lend itself an opportunity to do so. But yeah, that's the five. Do we get a British medal in the, does one of them get on the podium? I think it would be huge. Either Westy, Rowe, or Mills got on the podium. I guess you look at Mills and what he's done and what he can do over 1500 is probably the favorite to get on the podium.
Mm.
It would be mega if the likes of Gressier, you got the likes of Gressier, Jakob, that Thierry, the Spaniard as well, and people like that to contend with. That would be huge. So we'll see. But men's 10, who we got in that? We got Diva, Leonard, and Zach Mohammed. Obviously, we kind of wrapped that team up after Highgate last week, and again we're probably looking at Diva's got the best option there of getting a medal, and the other guys are hopefully just going to gain some good experience.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for people like Zach Mohammed and Roy Leonard, and then also for Diva, like you say, to kind of get in and around those medals, because this guy's been to major champs before. Like he's been to the Worlds, for example. He's shooting for shooting for Paris. But I guess yeah, it's an opportunity to kind of really kind of be up there, because I think that's the thing. Like when we talk about it might sound obvious, but we talk about our 8 and 15 teams. Like making the team makes you a contender on the world stage, whereas making the Olympic team in a 5 or a 10, for example, like you could be still absolutely way off it when it comes to those major champs at the end of the summer in Paris, for example. So the Europeans actually is a massive opportunity.
Yeah, for me is good opportunity, like you said, for Paddy to practice a tactical 10K. They're very few and far between. Say a tactical 10K, just 10K race, which isn't paced, and you haven't got wave lights, because
Mm.
you're looking at Euros, and if Paddy doesn't get that standard, get enough points, it's unlikely that he's going to go to the Olympics in the 10. However, I would say this European race is a massive opportunity for him to. I mean, he's already run 27:08, so he's inside that British standard. There's huge bonus points, place scoring points. If you do go, if he gets on the podium, I think he gets
Mm.
something like 80, 90 place score points.
Yeah,
So
and quite right
I
too.
actually think quite
That
right too.
that's
It would
that is where the points should really come from. Like we should want all our kind of continental, like European or whatever it is, medalists in the Olympics. So
I mean, I think they should have a bye, to be honest with you. I think
mm,
if you come top three in like a Europeans, but it gets tricky when you talk about that poor excuse
yeah.
of a competition like the Pan Am Games and stuff like that. What do what do you do there? But
Well, if it was up to the Americans, the US trials would get you a bye, wouldn't it? It's basically
yeah,
world champs. So
yeah, literally.
uh,
So. But
Yeah, that pretty. Oh, Steeple, sorry as well. Obviously, Zakaru's in there. So good to see him back, and good to see some Brits. Brits kind of back in the kind of steeplechase championship
Oh,
arena.
100%. I just wanted to, yeah, we'll move to the steeple now, but I just wanted to say, just clarify for the listeners as well. Paddy is currently 28th on the road to Paris. 27 people qualify for the Olympic Games on those world ranking
Mm,
quota spots. This is probably the last opportunity we're going to see for a lot of people to boost their 10K ranking. I don't think there's many other 10Ks that are going to take place between now and the end of June. So if he does get enough points at Europeans, he'll be in that quota. So I think if Paddy gets like a top three and a half decent time, he'll comfortably be in that quota, which will be fantastic. So there's a lot on the line for him, and then for Leonard and Mohammed, Zach Mohammed, it's just a case of how far up the field can they come. I think they're both ranked sort of in the teens. And it's just, if they can break into the top eight, that's a huge performance for them, like going forward over the next few years as well. And again, just giving them good ranking points for future years. But yeah, the men's steeple, I mean, it's huge this year. Like I just think the depth is back. All the big players have kind of pulled it out of the bag this year, and yeah, my bro running an 820, Mark Pierce backing it up 820 for the win in Belgium last weekend as well. And I do feel, I think Norman's been hard done by, and the standard being 825, he ran an 821 pretty much low earlier in the year. Well, just
mm.
a few weeks ago, and for them not to take him again, it's poor. And look, we go on to talk about Barry Fudge in this podcast episode and about how you need X amount of people in these medal zones for someone to go and get a medal as well, and how it all starts with the depth in these events in order to actually achieve something at the top. And again, I just feel like the steeplechase is an event that British athletics just haven't taken seriously. They make it as hard. They're just as awkward as possible when selecting that team as well. They're never lenient. If that was an 800 or a 1500, and there's someone who is heavily qualified, like they haven't just snuck the time, they've heavily qualified. I think they're being taken on that team, and like, but instead they'll take a fucking load of shitbags in the 4x4 or the 4x1, and even though they've got three guys doing the 100, three guys doing the 200, but we'll still shove in a couple people in the 4x1 relay, just to do a heat in Rome, which is just, there you go. But
Too
that's
right,
that.
mate.
That's my
Everyone
rant
loves the
over.
relay, though, don't they?
Everyone loves the relay. Yeah, yeah. They don't though,
Mate,
do
you're
they?
you're the one that gets into the sprints when the champs come on.
Look, relays are all well and good, but I just think it should be a rule that you just make do with the sprinters you take to the champs. And look, that
Mm.
might be harsh. That might be you're loading them up with too many races. It's unfair on the sprinters.
Oh, it's not far, is it though?
Yeah, they'd argue different, but I just feel like
No,
you've got
I am
six.
messing. I am messing.
I'm just saying you've got six athletes there in the 100, in the 200. You've maybe even got,
Mm.
those in the four. And I'm just like, surely you can piece together a team out of six sprinters. You
It
don't
would
need
be
to.
interesting though, wouldn't it? Like, can you imagine at all major champs if you could only select from athletes you had? It'd be like league matches all over. You get like they'd have to chuck Josh Curry on last leg because of an injury, and he comes home and they win.
All I'm saying is it'd be way more fun for us at home. So,
They
but
would.
yeah,
They would.
so I guess that was the only, I guess shock, if you like, in
Mm.
an area where BA, I think they could have picked someone. But fair enough. They've done that. Look, we don't know the sprint events as well, and there's only one guy going in the four hurdles and a couple in the 110 hurdles and stuff. So I'm sure there's people being hard done by throughout. But also, actually, I mean, we may as well mention no half marathon team on the men's side, but they've got one on the women's, and obviously they've got Donnelly, Clara Evans, Caddy Howard Thackeray, and Laura McNeil. So I think if it's like last time, this is a team event. So try and get that team score up, and for a half marathon team, that's a very strong half marathon team.
Yeah, it is, and obviously for someone like Callie, great prep I think for Paris as well. Obviously, she knows she's locked in for that. So I think just like a nice little like stepping stone, isn't it, towards the big one later in the year.
Yeah, 100%, man. So there's Euros. We're looking forward to it. Starts Friday, 7th of June, runs for 6 days, I think, pretty sure it's something like that, mate. I'll double check. When does it finish up? Yeah, Wednesday the 12th of June. So yeah, it runs for 6 days. 5K is straight finals, obviously 10 is straight finals, and you've got your heats and everything else. So it should be a good one. And that will keep us busy next week. But let's talk about Oslo quick because that 5K last night was crazy. We mentioned the 1500 already a little bit. I mean, Jakob's dive, and I thought Chariot actually had to beat him over if it wasn't for that dive. So
Yeah, Jakob was just
obviously,
making a meal of it, trying to get back in the headlines.
mate, honestly, I think he's had a long travel. He's obviously traveled home from Eugene and in Oslo, but
Mm,
he's looking more beatable than he's ever looked, in my opinion. Like when he was at the front, no one, and this is the thing, at 250 to go, no one was attacking him. This is usually where we see Kerr and
mm.
I know we didn't last week, but this is usually where we see people like Whiteman and Kerr, and that's when Yak has been vulnerable when they've got in front of him with 200 to go. But he used to be able to like really hammer it that last 200 and especially the last 100 pull away. I don't think Cherry could believe what was going on. At like 20 to go or 50 to go, Cherry was just like, oh wait, Jakob's not accelerating. He's used to pulling away there. But and then Cherry just kind of was right behind him, swung wide, almost took him, and obviously Jakob's won it on a dive. But in my head, Jakob got beat yesterday.
Yeah, and someone like Jakob doesn't like to win it like that.
No,
Like
no, that's what I mean.
he likes to
Jakob,
absolutely dominate.
yeah. And
So
and he's really vulnerable. So we'll see how his season develops. And for me as well, he doesn't seem to be as fast as he was in previous years. Like I think
he's
he's
not
come
going to
out.
be. He's had time off through
Yeah.
injury. Who knows? He has got
It
time
might be a
though.
good thing
He
for
has got
Paris.
time.
It might be a good thing,
Yeah,
but we'll see. But they still ran 329, which to be fair, it, yeah,
the world lead. So
it's pretty it's pretty impressive. We'll give him that. Yeah.
yeah,
But
we're not Jakob haters or anything like that.
no, we're not. And in fact, like I really respect him because he does turn up to everything. And
Mm.
he always puts himself out there, which I really respect. But that men's 5K in Gebuet slashing Bakili's national record. What a shame. But he's officially erased from the record books pretty much in everything these days, unfortunately. But yeah, I can't believe he's still 30, Gebuet, because I say that guy's been around for so long. He's still only 30.
Yeah. Well, you
Um,
look at the likes of Kipchoge. He's got another 15 years in him, then, doesn't he? Like,
but
so
yeah, yeah. Oh, he's peaking in 5K age, right? But
mm,
what a race. And you've got to give it to someone like Kajelcha for
hanging
driving
in
on
there as
driving on
well.
that 4K and hanging in there. I mean, talk about hanging in there. Bloody the pacemaker Yahune. He was the one doing the work till Kajelcha came by him and he hung in
Mm,
there around 12:49. So he won't be a pacemaker anymore. That's it.
yeah.
He's a bid for the Ethiopian team at that rate. Um,
Do you know what the craziest thing? I was like going through the results at the end, and I was like, oh, Grauver's quite far down there, isn't he? You see, it's like 12:50
12:50.
national
Yeah.
record PB, and it's like, how are you that far down any sort of field,
Yeah. Yeah.
running times like that? But like 12:36 is just crazy, isn't it?
That's off the charts, mate. And just the depth in that race, like you said, Grijalva sixth in 12:50, Dominic Labalu seventh in 12:50. National record for him is Andres Almgren eighth in 12:50. Cheptegei's ninth in 12:51. For God's sake, like Gracier's run 12:54, Tefera 12:55. Like 14th place was 13:08. Telehan Bakili and 12:56 was Wild Shoot in 13th. So it's just that is just a ridiculous field and actually, when you look at it, there's bar the likes of Tefera and Bakili who are Ethiopians. That's actually, you could have that could be an Olympic final there because they're all, it's not like you've got six Ethiopians who are all running
Yeah,
this. There's a
yeah.
mix of nations in there. But yeah, what a run. And I think just looking at the way like Kajelcha and Gebuet, and I just hope they can run like that come the major champs. That will really make things interesting if the major champs is that quick. And I
Hmm.
do think after Jakob's done his 15s, you you run it out of him. If you're running 12:45 pace and then kick, I don't know. maybe he can, maybe he can run 12:35, and we just haven't seen it yet, 12:40. But
Yeah, he's never needed to, has he? So
well, I think he would have done if he knew he was in 12:40 shape. I think he would have done. He would have lined up for a big one, a bit like when we saw him do the 2 mile world record last year, or was it the
mm,
3,000 world record? I think we would see him um, pop a big 5K if he knew he was in that sort of shape.
I think it's one of those things. I don't think you can ever know you're in that shape. So I think that's the difference. Like,
Yeah, I guess well, you're
yeah,
in good shape, and then you get after it, and
yeah, but there's
not
good
nice.
shape and there's 12:36.
Yeah,
Like so it's
yeah.
whereas I think he does line up knowing he's the best in the world over 5,000 meters, for example. But
Mhm.
that's different
Yeah,
to knowing you can go and pop a time like that.
yeah. But the thing is, what I see with these guys is like they are able to like lead for, and the likes have obviously made a massive difference, but they can lead for big chunks. Like
Mm,
Kajelcha was kind of itching. He then led for a big chunk at the end there, and I know Gebriwet kind of he won on the kick finish and pulled away, but and that Yahune guy, he led for ages. Sort of from a mile in to sort of 3K or even just over 3K, 3.5K, something like that. Like he was up at the front forcing the pace. He still ended up with 12:49. So these guys can actually do it off the front. They've got the likes to key off, but yeah, it was but the ball ran a fantastic five. And again, it just shows you that the level's moving on. I mean, when Gracier's coming 11th in a Diamond League in 12:54. I remember Farah winning Monaco in 12:53, and it was like, you know,
mm.
it was just like unheard of. It was just huge. It was a mega result, and now you've got that's getting you 12th in Oslo, and there's people not even in that race who probably would feature.
Yeah, and
You've
I
got
remember
like
when we
Ralph
were complaining
Fishing.
about the standards. We complaining about standards a few years ago. Like we're guilty of that. We're like, what are these standards like? It's making it so difficult to make teams. Da, 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 da. But actually,
What I
you look
would
at the
say then, mate,
world,
is
we're like,
yeah, yeah.
revisit them again.
The When you go into the points, like there are massive weighting points on Diamond Leagues. So like
Mm,
you go in a Diamond League, and even if you nab like 12th, I think you get about 50 bonus points. To put that into context, I think if you win British Champs, you get 60 bonus points. So 12th in the Diamond League. And I looked at like that women's 3K yesterday was like a prime opportunity because obviously that can go towards your five. And you think like how, I mean, there was hardly any sort of East Africans in there. Like that's a mega opportunity. You look at that Griffith who won, like I haven't checked what that's done to her world ranking. I think they get released every Wednesday, but so we won't know till next week. But like, God, she would have got a whole host of points for it, like 120 or 100 bonus points or something. Then obviously she's run a half decent time because she's won. And so if you can get in these, and it's the same, and obviously the 1500 is irrelevant because everyone gets a standard anyway. But when you're talking 5K and these people on the fringes, you can like if a British person could just get in one of these diamond leagues, they would be doing okay. Um,
mate, I'm
so
more impressed that you know that the world rankings get refreshed every Wednesday, mate. You must be the only guy sat there refreshing that page.
I think all the athletes themselves on the fringes, I think.
You and
And
Paddy
coaches.
Diva.
Yeah, yeah. Oh mate, Paddy Diva sitting in 28th. It's yeah. I think
Yeah.
he's
Oh,
gonna be
it must
okay
be
after
horrible.
Europe.
It must be horrible.
But
But
so mate, that's
one
pretty I mean,
thing.
look, pre was amazing last week. I mean, we'll
Mm,
just quickly talk about Keely. Absolute sheer domination. The thing move bottles it again, pulls out. I'm really disliking the thing move. She hasn't even done anything for me to dislike except just not turn up to races. But yeah, Keely just doing her thing, and she seems to have, I guess, I guess she's just become a lot more confident in like, look, and we've always thought that like Mora used to mess the races around, but if you're so confident, it's like what Farah used to do. He'd be like, okay, you lot, you go surge and do your thing, and I'll
mm,
just drift through on that fourth K. And it's like, I think she just backs herself so much now, and she's so confident in what she can run that she doesn't need, and she's like, look, if I go run 155, chances are Mora won't be like, she won't be able to do
yeah.
that. So I just don't need to get caught up in her games and yeah, I think that's a worry for people like Mora and all these other women come Olympics because Keely just seems to be so sure of herself right now, and she seems to be able to just like negotiate the perfect 800. no matter who's in her way.
Yeah, that's it, mate. And that's how I describe it. Like she got it absolutely bang on, and I don't think she could have run that race in a better way. So supreme performance from her. Like let's just hope that she can kind of repeat that um
Mm.
come Paris, because I guess yeah, if you throw a thing Mo in there, Mora kind of is more expectant of it, and they're prepping for it, like of her sitting back a bit further. Yeah, they're obviously going to make it more difficult, but I do think she's up to the challenge for sure. And yeah, it was just a fantastic run.
She's the best in the world. Keely's the best in the world. She's heavy favorite for me. Moo is Moo, and you just never know what you're gonna get. None of us do. But yeah, right now, these women will find it hard to beat with Keely.
Mm, yeah.
I honestly feel like, Keely would have to mess up not to win the Olympics. I look at Moore and I'm just like, she's just all over the place. Yes, she's got a good kick, but if Keely ignores that and ignores her like games, she wins. And then you look at everyone else, like even people like Riki and this Sikadizo from South Africa and Notoya all these people. I don't know what Keely's record against them is, but she's beaten them so many times. I'm not even sure they've ever beaten her.
Mm,
You know, like has Riki ever beaten Keely? Like before, like since Keely's come, basically top in the world, since Tokyo. I'm not sure. People like
no,
Natoya Gul
I don't think
topping.
so.
Yeah, Natoya Gul, I don't think she's ever beaten Keely. Like Raven Rogers, all these people. I thought the
Mm.
Ethiopian indoors, Daguma, she might be a bit of a threat. Yeah. Like
But
Keely's
then
heavy.
if you're a thing Mo, you're sat there thinking Keely's never beat me, you know. So
No, she obviously last year in Budapest, but yeah,
mm.
it's yeah. I think Keely is heavy favorite for that women's 800.
She is, but she's been
So
heavy favorite before. So
no, I'm not sure, mate. I'm not sure. Like I think last year, Mora and Mo, they were so kind of just you just didn't know what you were going to get, and I do think they
the
were.
year
But
before, was it the year before where she's dominating everything?
in Eugene, I think she was dominating everything,
Mm,
and it
I
was
think she
looking
was,
likely.
yeah,
But yeah, again, I just feel like she's learned from those years now, and the thing is, these women haven't changed. I think like Mora kind of like burst onto the scene a little bit, so I think it was like, oh, who is like
yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't really
I
know
agree.
how to beat this woman. And then again, like with the battles in Mu and Tokyo, like she just seemed to be a little bit further on than Keely, like when it comes to like I guess speed, the 400 and stuff. But actually, Keely knows how to beat these women now, and I just think it's a bit of a habit. And even Barry Fudge mentions it in this podcast, right? Once Farah learned how to beat those guys, he just never lost. Like he would get himself in good shape, and he would just repeat the same thing he did at every major champs. And I think Keely is learning how to beat these women.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but that pretty much wraps us up for pre. Obviously, we spoke about Jakob and Kerr as we were talking for a Euros team. Like again, Kerr and Keely right now are just brilliant for the sport, brilliant for British distance running, because they're just purely dominating in the 800 and 1500. So great to see, great for us. Obviously, that other great meet we had, obviously, as you've seen from our results roundup, was the Elsewhere Classic. So shout out to our social media man for that one. But we'll make sure next week we have all the correct places
Look, I
and
can tell you
venues
where it
for
was. It
those
was it
meets.
was it was just a meeting in fallback. I was actually lucky enough to commentate on it, and Bell ran well. It was pretty miserable conditions to sort of break 2 minutes. So um, got to give it to her there. I think she is someone who seems to be building through this season. If she gets it right, I think she's going to be a 157 shape in sort of 6 weeks' time if she keeps this trajectory going. But I guess also, mate, we forgot to mention that women's world record in the 10K, 10,000 at Eugene and
Oh
28:54
yes,
Beatrice
yeah.
Chebet. And like, I mean, that's the thing. It's just like, it's just ridiculous. But I guess it's not as exciting when we've seen someone go quicker on the roads. That was the one thing for
Mm,
me. Like when we know actually someone's going to run 28:47 on the roads, like it wasn't as exciting. It wasn't as a big deal because we've already seen someone break 29 minutes when really it should have been a big deal. So, but that's a chat for another day.
Yeah, we don't want to get into super shoes now. Yeah, obviously coming up soon. We got the NCAAs next weekend. So for those of you who follow kind of the collegiate system, that's obviously something to look forward to. And then probably the most famous British race of the season, that Watford Diamond League, maybe outside of your British champs, for example. So yeah, obviously that BMC over in Watford, got to be the fastest track in the UK. Like definitely us who kind of grew up down south would say so. And yeah, obviously BMC now partnering with Sports Shoes as well. So great to see that kind of Sports Shoes, who we obviously partner with as well, supporting some brilliant meets in the UK as always. Yeah, so then that's kind of what's up next, and we'll let you just enjoy this episode with Barry Fudge. Obviously, guy needs no introduction. Spent many years at British Athletics, and obviously, as I mentioned at the start, worked very closely with Sir Mo Farah, and he speaks a lot about kind of their relationship and Mo's preparation for some major championships. So enjoy this episode, and we'll catch you very soon. Okay, Barry, firstly, just welcome to the podcast. You're joining us from over in Qatar. So do you want to just tell our listeners kind of what you're doing out there and what your current job is? And you've just been telling us off air that you're actually moving soon as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's great to talk about endurance running. Yeah, so I'm in Doha, Qatar. I've been here a couple of years working at Aspire Academy. So I lead up the coaching program for the endurance runners there and also look after the physiology department as well. So kind of a mixed role. We've just got a new coach, you guys all know, Charlie Grice. He's just started with us. And then we've got another coach as well. So we've got three coaches in the endurance team, around about 20 odd lads. There's kind of two main aims with the program. The main one is to qualify people for World Juniors. And then the second one is to help them get scholarships or whatever they need to further their running and education in the future. So yeah, I've been inspired a couple of years. And then as I was just saying to you guys, I finish up there actually this week, and then I'm heading to Riyadh to Saudi Arabia to be the head coach for the Saudi team starting next month.
Interesting. So
Wow.
Aspire is very much targeted at younger athletes, is it?
Yeah, so it's junior athletes. So there's kind of a wide range. You know, the oldest will be 18, 19 in the school, and then the youngest that we'll look after are around about 15 or 16. Um, and it's just it is like kind of what it says in the tin. It's an academy for young men to yeah to do school and their athletics at the same time. The biggest thing at Aspire is probably football, actually. The department there is humongous. Um, and athletics is just one of the sports that's there.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. And you've been doing that for kind of a couple of years now, as you mentioned. But I'm sure most of the people listening will obviously know you from your British athletics days, probably
Right.
most notably. Should we rewind then and kind of chat about how you got into like kind of sport physiology and coaching in the first
Sure.
place?
Um, yeah, it's a good question, actually. I actually ended up doing my PhD in Kenya. And like it's a really weird way how it happened, but I somehow ended up, going doing a PhD in Glasgow, but studying why Kenyan and Ethiopian runners were so good at the time. There was two sides to the lab. There was like a nature versus nurture, so a genetics versus environment type of slant to it. I was doing the environment, so that was looking at why are they, things like the training, the altitude, the things that they eat, and so on as part of it. So yeah, I spent a bit of time there. I was very fortunate. I had a fantastic group of athletes, included people like Eliud Kipchoge for a couple of years, and then a couple of other people that you guys are quite young, but previous world champions, Brevin Caputo, Olympic steeplechase champion, people like that, Ben Limo over the 5,000 in Helsinki. So an incredible group to like have an apprenticeship with, um, and learn about like distance running from kind of the best people in the world. So I've done that for almost 3 years, and I finished that up with a stint in Ethiopia, working with Kenenisa Bekele as he got ready for the I think it was Osaka Championships at the time, when he went on and won the 10,000 and then done the double in Beijing the year after. And following that, I kind of wanted to be back in the UK. Took on a role at the EIS Institute of Sport as a research physiologist in athletics. And I'd done that for a year. Got made redundant, as people seem to do in these roles. Done a year in Scotland at the Scottish Institute of Sport, and then back to the IS full time, working as the senior physiologist for the athletics program. And around about that time, that's when we started off the altitude program that was quite successful over a period of time. So money was coming in from London Marathon, and we were supporting athletes to go off to training camp. So I was kind of running the altitude program for that. And then kind of around about 2009 or so, I met Mo Farah, tested him, and that started my journey with Mo, to every championship and training camps and so on. And that went on for a considerable period of time. But in between all that, 2013, end of 2013, I took on the role of head of endurance, and done that through to 2020. So yeah, that's kind of a brief potted history. It's amazing how things just roll from one thing to the next.
Right, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, to be honest, and I'm sure we'll get onto Farah and your relationship with him. But do you feel like your research then, I guess early 2000s and then into the 2010s, you feel like that did catapult? You talk about heading up that altitude program at the EIS. Did that catapult kind of altitude to what we see today? Like everyone is doing it, and not just
Yeah.
over the top, even sub elites.
I mean, in my mind, working in East Africa, the altitude was so important to the success of these athletes. It was very key. And even just anecdotally speaking to the athletes, they all felt that altitude was incredibly important. And I remember like stories with Bekele where, when he was going off to Beijing to do the Olympics, he was talking about flying home between the 5K and the 10K because he felt altitude was so important. So and again, it wasn't new in the UK. It was done through the 70s and the 80s. And then it just kind of got forgotten about for a decade or so, where it wasn't a program supported thing. It was individual athletes and coaches going off. Um, and then what we tried to do in 2009, when Ian Stewart was the head of endurance then, was really try to bring it together as a program that the federation was supporting with money and support from London Marathon. And that's really what started that process. And it was very much, one of the reasons I got the job was because I'd spent so much time at altitude. And one of the things that's hard about altitude is just trying to get it right. Um, and yeah, so that was trying to do that. And we probably took a few years before we began to get any momentum whatsoever. But when we started, I think the only elite athlete that was on world-class funding that went at the time was Lisa Zabriskie. There was no one else that was on funding that went. Fast forward into now, everyone's doing it, everyone's using it, and so on. So it took a while to get that going and see the results and so on. But I think it's quite a stable thing now in everyone's program.
Mhm.
Uh, what they do with it.
Yeah, one thing we wanted to ask you about it was how much kind of influence did you have over what some of these athletes were doing? Because obviously you're kind of renowned as being almost synonymous with kind of some of Farah's training, but obviously he was working with Alberto at the time. Like how much influence could you have over like someone like him and his program?
Yeah, I mean, so we had quite a lot of influence, to be honest. So Mo would spend most of his time in Europe or Africa. Um, I know he was based in Portland, but he generally, if I just go through a year, he would finish the champs and then he would have maybe 6 weeks off, 4 weeks off in Portland with his family, and he would build back up towards that Christmas period to be ready to go on training camp in January. And we'd pretty much be on the road from January through to the next championships. And it would mainly be in the winter, we would be in Africa, and in the summer, we'd be in Europe. So we had quite a big say in it. And Mo and I would talk a lot about the plan, how we were going to go from high altitude to low altitude through the year, what the racing schedule looks like. And Alberto was obviously part of those conversations. But Mo had quite a big say in where he was and what he was doing, probably more than what people would think.
Mhm.
And for many, many, many years, Mo just followed the federation plan, which was, what we were doing with everyone else. They got to a point where we needed to change it and go higher because we needed to try and change the stimulus. But yeah, he was doing pretty much the same as what the rest of the program was doing. And I quite often do talks about this, and I think one of the things that was quite key to get momentum in the program, in the altitude program, was you had all these young athletes training with somebody like Mo Farah for 6 weeks in Kenya or Fontenay or whatever it was, and I think that role model, this is what you've really got to do training wise and recovery wise to get to the top. And later on, that was somebody like Laura Muir, and then later on, that's somebody like Jake Whiteman, and I think these people they set the standard for the type of training and so on and what needs to happen. So I think it's just a side on to altitude. I think it's obviously massively important physiology wise, but that training camp idea brings people together, and it creates role models, and it creates real momentum in the program that you're trying to do.
Look, Farah's success is going to be hard to replicate, but do you believe that, in order to reach the very top, the heights that he did, you have probably got to be away for, I mean, it sounds like he was up at altitude, whether it be low altitude, high altitude, for 6 months before a championship. If you're a world-class athlete of that caliber, is that kind of the minimum?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 8 months. We literally were going
Wow.
January to end of August. And I think there's obviously lots of different ways to do it, right? If you're a 5,000 meter runner, 10,000 meter runner, it's different than if you're an 1,500 meter runner, you
Mm,
know? Um, but you are competing against people in Kenya and Ethiopia who are there all year round and
mm,
have been there since they were born. So I think it is unfortunately something I think you have to do. Um, but again, there's lots of different ways that you can build an engine and so on. But I think it's the stimulus that you get from altitude for endurance training is so potent that
mm,
yeah, I just think it's hard not to do it. I just think I think if you speak to any athlete, to be honest, you can speak to Josh Kerr, Jake Whiteman now, or Laura Muir and Keeley or whoever, that they are on the road pretty much all year anyway. They're
mm,
bouncing from training camp to training camp, and sometimes it'll be altitude, sometimes it'll be sea level, sometimes they're going home for a week and then they're competing for 2 weeks. I think it's for everyone. It's not just somebody like Mo. It's a commitment that everyone has to have for a significant period of time.
mm.
So it's not easy.
Would you say that was one of the biggest changes in Farah's success? Obviously, a lot of people just put it down to moving to Salazar, but pre 2009, 08, when he had the disappointment in Beijing, was he out? Probably wasn't
Yeah.
committed to altitude 8 months of the year, was he?
No, I mean, so if you go back in time, it was a bit messy. He was living with the Kenyans in Teddington, and he realized if he realized then he wasn't doing enough, he wasn't training the right way, and so on. So he would go back to Kenya with these guys, but it was just random. There was no plan. He would jump into sessions, and yeah, they're great sessions, but it wasn't necessarily the right thing for him. So I think having a very structured, well thought out plan about going from high altitude to medium altitude to low altitude, being in the right places at the right time for training and racing, I think made a huge difference to him. But I think he also, when he went to Portland, he began to realize that it wasn't just running, it was also the strength and conditioning program that he was doing, which was, I think, massively changed him physically. I remember him coming in to do body composition with me back in 2009 or whatever it was. And yeah, he was super skinny, but he wasn't toned. He was like kind of flabby in this kind of weird way, but really like not a lot of fat on him, but he wasn't muscular. Whereas if you
Mm,
contrast that to him in his prime, he was very muscular and toned, but not heavy. And I think the other thing, which I think is quite key, but not it's kind of a tough topic to talk about because of the way people might abuse this, but his body weight is massively different as well. So in 2008, he was running at about 58 kilos. In 2012, he's running at 52. It's a huge difference. And you can
mm,
see it if you look at pictures, the change in his thighs was particularly where there was a big change. So I think there was a lot of things. I don't think you couldn't just put it on one
mm,
thing. Then
mm,
there's obviously the training program. I think what Alberto was doing, which Mo wasn't doing in the past, was just more speed work. Um, I don't think that's the right word. Speed endurance would probably be the
mm,
more
mm,
rather than just doing say Ks and things like that, doing lots of repeats of 200s and 300s. doing lots of 1500-meter work. And you could see that because, you ran 3:28. So I think he changed a lot in a period of time, but I think the other thing was just his mentality. He began to figure this out, and how you do it. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was one particular thing. I would say it's a combination of things that came together. Um, and yeah, it's things like 2012 were again the kind of glue that everyone was aiming towards for him. And I think it's just worth mentioning that, I mean, Mo went out to Portland to be Galen's training partner. Like that was always that was never negotiable. The plan was always to bring Mo out so that Galen could win an Olympic medal. That was it. And he did, obviously. But yeah, I would say around 20 after that, around 2013, that program started to change a bit, and obviously Mo was, Olympic champion, world champion a couple of times, and it became Mo just kind of doing his program after that. So yeah, I just think lots of reasons, but he learned a huge amount from Alberto and those guys.
Mm.
Yeah, something we wanted to ask you about was how kind of out of shape you ever seen Mo, because as kind of fans of the sport, he's so renowned for turning up to every champ just in the peak shape,
Yeah.
always ready to go when it matters. But were there times kind of throughout the season where you're thinking, bloody
Oh
hell, like
yeah.
he's only got 8 weeks here to kind of
Yeah,
get
yeah.
to
I
the
mean,
top,
I could tell you all sorts of stories, really. Right. So I think this is one of the other reasons why Mo was so successful at champs, because he totally believed in this idea about it's about winning medals. It's not about running fast.
Mm,
So I don't really care about going to a Diamond League and running
Mm.
12:45 or whatever. Mo never really done that. Never really. We always set up the program to be peaking exactly when the big championship was. There was no question of that. And I think sometimes people can get confused with when they need to peak and so on. Um, so I think, yeah, that's the program was massively designed for that. So that obviously meant that there were lots of times where he wasn't in shape. And, up until about, I would say every year up until about Christmas, he he was way out of shape, he'd be doing reps on the grass and Matt Centrovic would be beating him. It would be, he was never in shape before around that January time. And then we'd use January just to get in a bit of shape, doing indoors and then roll from there. But probably if I give you like one good story, I think which kind of I think demonstrates kind of where we were at 2016. We were in Flagstaff for 6 weeks around that kind of May time, and we were doing a documentary, and you've probably seen it. It was the BBC documentary, but Mo was doing this 120 miles a week thing, and normally we wouldn't do 120 miles a week every week in, week out. It would be maybe a week up and a week down or whatever. But he done 6 weeks of 120 miles, and not much of fast stuff and not much gym stuff. It was just running, running, running. And we got to Birmingham Diamond League, and it was he broke the British record over 3,000, but it was the way he ran it was terrible. He was just it was same splits the whole way around. We expected him to run the last K a lot quicker than he did. He just didn't have anything. His legs were dead, because he'd been training 120 miles in Flagstaff for 6 weeks. And if he'd been pushed in that race, he would have been beaten. And
Mm.
everyone was like, "This is great, broken the British record, Birmingham Diamond League, you're on track for the Olympic Games." And Mo and we flew to Barcelona that night and we sat in the hotel and we were just like, "That was absolutely terrible. Like, we need to look at this because that thing that he had, that kick, that ability to push on, it was gone." And it was like, what the hell do we do now to get this back? And it took him from then all the way through to the London Diamond League, for him to feel good again. And that was like
Mm.
maybe 2 weeks before the Olympics, something like that. So he got away with it, but yeah, like there was times where he wasn't in shape, but again, we had time because we knew it was just about August. That was it. Um,
Mm.
so
And
yeah, lots of examples of that where it was like, geez, we're going to cut this close.
so and during this period, you're obviously spending a bit of time with him. Is he panicking? Are you
No, he never
panicking?
panicked. No, never panicked. Never. Because again, like we've been there before, and we just, Mo was a very like like what we call here shui shui, which is like, hey, it's kind of like I'll either be ready or I won't, and it's like panicking actually makes it worse. It was more about, right, let's have a conversation and I think about what we really need to do here. So I don't think I ever heard Mo panic ever. And that's partly coming from me as well, giving him the reassurance that we've got time, don't worry about it, we're going to sort this out, daddy daddy da. And I think when you have a team around you that's been there and done it before, I think it makes a huge difference. You don't need to panic. You're just like, right, we've done this before, we know what we've got to do, let's just get back on it. So yeah,
Mm.
I don't think he ever panicked.
And I think something I wanted to ask was, do you see a reason why he was able to, stay at the highest level for so long as well? To go, basically 6, 7 years unbeatable,
Yeah, incredible.
incredible time. And we talk about Bikili, but I think Bikili even struggled to get that length of time and do back-to-back Olympics in that sort of shape that Farah was in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, so Bikili done Athens and Beijing,
Mm,
and then he probably didn't win as many world championship medals as Mo did. I mean, I think the incredible thing with Mo was that it was doubles every year.
mm,
That I think that's the thing that is incredible to be able to turn up and do doubles and win them is just it's mind blowing. But I think he's incredibly talented. But the one thing we never really had to deal with. So in Mo's early days, he used to have lots of stress fractures and problems. We were lucky through that sort of 2011 to 17 period where we had issues. We had calf strains and we had little problems here and there, but there was never a big one like a stress fracture or anything like that. And part of that was, Alberta was meticulous around, making sure like you run around the track one way and you run around the track the other way and tracking miles and things like that we never got into the situation that it was going to get hurt. We never ever sorry Alberto never ever pushed him beyond what was a safe limit. I think the only time we really done it was when he was prepping for the marathon and we put a bit more
mm,
miles in, but the intensity drops, you see. So we got lucky, but I say lucky. I don't think it was. It was a well managed, super detailed program, so that and he had the best support in the world, in terms of physio and whatever. Like his strength and conditioning program was massively set up to support his running. So again, that protects you. But yeah, we had the odd issue here and there, but we had a pretty clear run. We had a pretty clear
mm,
run, and again, this might surprise people, but Mo, after the championships, would take a period of time off and he wouldn't really be properly training until January, like really, really training. So again, it's like he would give his body quite a big period of time to recover at the end of the season before he would get back on it and push again. So yeah, I think he had an incredible run. And I think also, I just think once you learn how to win at that level and it becomes not
mm.
easy, but it becomes you're not burning energy thinking about how to do it and what's next, and you just repeat the same process almost every year. And yeah, like I think you could see the tail end of 2017 at that champs. He was just beginning to just come off it a bit. He wasn't quite as dominant as he was previously, but I think what an incredible career and
Mm,
to do what was it, 10 gold medals or something? It was just
mm.
ridiculous.
Mm. Yeah, do you think we'll ever see anyone else like quite like that in terms of like winning at that level for that period of time over 5 and 10K?
I think it's harder now as well.
Mm.
I don't think hard is not the right word. I think that with the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, it's different now because they all go to the marathon quite quick.
Mm,
Um, so I was reading, a lot of them there. They might do 5K for one year and then 10K the next year, and then they're running marathons because that's where the money is. So I think you see a lot of turnover in these events, a bit more than you maybe did in the past. Mo would turn up and be competing against the same people he competed against last year, pretty much,
mm,
maybe with one or
mm,
two changes. But when I watch it now, I think there's just quite a bit of turnover. And I think, yeah, I think it's possible to dominate like that. But I think, yeah, like I don't think you'll see many people that were as good as finishing as Mo. Like,
mm,
I think Mo could have beaten a Bikili or anyone like that on a finish. He wouldn't have beaten him on a paced race, but he would have beaten him on a finish. Bekele would run 54 seconds at the end of a race for the last lap, 2:25:26 for a K. Mo was down at 52, and he ran a 2:17 in Beijing. So a different level of finishing that I just think that's probably why it was just so potent. And it's very hard for somebody, you used to read stuff and people would be going, why didn't the Kenyans push on, and why didn't they push the pace? And it's like, well, because they have to sacrifice somebody then, and
Mm.
somebody loses a medal. So that's just not how the game's played anymore. It's nobody wants to lose a medal, so they kind of let them do it. And then if you can run 2:22 for the last K and 52 seconds for the last lap, I don't think there's many people, even in the 1500, it would beat you.
Mm. No,
So
no,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's possible, but I think I don't know whether we'll see it, because I think the people that are probably capable of it are just it's just this turnover in the sport, and they kind of move through the events quite quickly now. In the past, people would maybe spend 10 years running on the track, but in Kenya now, it's like a couple of years and then they're out. They're racing marathons. But
Mm.
yeah,
Before we move on there, you mentioned a few comparisons between Farah and Bekele. Obviously, spending a bit of time with both, were there periods in your career as a physiologist, you were comparing them, you were potentially looking at
yeah,
both their
sure.
numbers, and was Farah ahead of him, or did you see some crazy things from Bekele as well?
Uh, so I only spent a summer with Bekele,
Right.
but I seen one session he done. It was 10 days before Osaka in the National Stadium, and he done eight repeats of 400, 200. So it was 400, 200, 8 times. And my memory is it was like a jog. After the four, it was a jog to the 200, and then a 400 jog recovery. So reasonable recovery, right? But he was doing them in 54 and 26. That's basically what he was running them in, and it didn't waver. And it was, and you go, why were you doing that? And it's like, because I have to run 54:26 in the last lap, and if I do that, I'll win the gold medal. And that's what he done for his last workout. And it was incredible, an incredible workout. And again, this is at 2,500 meters or whatever in Addis. And I've never seen anything like that since. And I don't think somebody like Mo could do that workout, if I'm honest. And, I used to talk to Mo and Alberto about it quite a bit. But again, you've got to understand that Bekele couldn't do some of the workouts that Mo was doing in terms of pace. Bekele wouldn't have been able to do a 3:28 workout. No way. So it's kind of like they both had their strengths and weaknesses. Mo was always he can do an incredible paced workout, but he's not necessarily going to do an incredible like 10 by a K or something like that, because that wasn't really he had enough, but it wasn't really he's never going to break a world record with it. So yeah, like there was big differences between them really. Bekele was just a monster aerobically, a
Mm.
complete monster. And if you watch a lot of his races, I mean, he's killed everyone before he even gets to the last lap, because he's just so much better than everyone else.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, lots of interesting things. And again, somebody like Bekele was about 54, 53 kilos when he raced. And again, I'd go back and say to Mo, like, you're 58, he's 53. That's kind of, and again, and I don't mean it to sound like people should go and starve themselves and do this
Mm.
sort of stupid stuff. So please don't do that. But what I'm meaning is, like, the physiology of running is very dependent on body weight and size. And especially if you're running in the heat as well, it makes a big difference. So yeah, it's a huge change in what you can do in terms of performance. Similar to, if you're Tour de France cyclist going up a hill or
Mm.
whatever, every pound of body weight makes a huge difference. But it's a very difficult thing to talk about sometimes, because people abuse it and they do silly things. And but yeah,
But But these are discussions he needs to have at the elite end, right? And I'm sure. So, did you, like you said, you mentioned it to him, and were you able to quantify? Look, Farah, if you lose a kilo, you might go from running 27 flat to
yeah,
26:55,
you
etc.
can work it out. You can work it out. So you can work out what every kilo adds to a race. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's
Mm.
significant. And then if you're losing 6 kilos, I mean, it's humongous in that world. It's a different story, mate. It's like, it pretty much is going probably from 13:10 to 12:50. you
Jesus.
know,
And how does he do?
with
How did he?
everything else, with everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah, of course, yeah. How does he do that safely? And I think that's the key thing. It is with everything else,
Yeah, so
the
this is
workouts and
really
everything
good to
like
talk
that.
about, obviously, like we'd manage it. We regularly he'd weigh himself, obviously, check it, but he would do it very, very slowly. There was no major cutting. There was no, let's just starve myself for the last 4 weeks. It was never like that. It was, he'd arrive in camp at 55 kilos in January, and he would work his way down to 52. And that was it. It wasn't, he'd be 52 on race day in August. But it wasn't like I'm going to go to 55 to 52 in 4 weeks, which is what some people try and do. It was just a gradual cut down with looking at his training and what he was eating, and he would do it naturally over time. He figured it out. This is what he could eat, and this is what he could do, and this is he would get there eventually. So when I work with a lot of other athletes in the UK, they would cut weight so quickly, and it's not good for you. Whereas he would be, and a lot of athletes do this now. Like they take their time and they do it gradually and they work their way down over a period of months. Um, and then yeah, you put it all back on in the off season, and then you start again in January, and that's kind of what he was doing. Um, yeah,
Mm.
take your
Yeah,
time with it.
for sure. You mentioned some other athletes in kind of in the UK, like moving away from Mo. Then, like when you were kind of head of endurance at British Athletics, what was your kind of the scope of your role, I guess?
Yeah. So when I came into post in 2013, I realized like this isn't maybe the right word, but I would think Mo's a freak. He is compared to other people, right? He wasn't the product of a system. He was
Mm.
just somebody that was so good. And once he was exposed to the right environment, he was away. He's like a Bolt or someone like that. They're just once in a generation type athletes, right? And I realized that we were struggling in the UK. We hadn't really been that successful in the middle distances for a long time. We'd had medals from Hannah England in 2011. We'd had a medal from Jenny Meadows in '09. Um, but we weren't producing athletes as a system. We weren't getting depth. We weren't getting people coming through. We were getting the odd athlete here and there. Um, and so when I came in, that was my project was to try and develop that middle distance program and get it back to where it should be. And I'd use metrics like I'd call things like the medal zone. If you're in the medal zone, you're somebody that's run say like 144 as a man. You're somebody that's in the medal zone. You're capable of winning. We had very very few of those people. I think in 2014, 13 we had one or two, and that was just Mo. There was no one else in what I would call the medal zone. So I started working with London Marathon a lot more on a strategy, and we got a bit more money to try and develop this. And we really targeted the different levels of the program. So you guys will know, and some of your listeners will know, the world class program is great, but it only targets the top athletes. And at that time, the endurance program maybe had about 10 athletes on program. So it was very difficult for world class plan to support any development below that. And I felt really strongly that for us to have more people at the top, we had to have more people at every level of the pathway. You can't just suddenly get more people at the top without building the people below that, without building the people below that, and allowing them to transition through the pathway. So studied a lot around the pathway and how we develop that. And so we were basically just putting money into areas of the pathway where we were supporting people to go on altitude training camps, and we were supporting coaches and people like that of a level below world class plan and even below that. And the idea was that we would start to create depth in some of the events at certain levels, and then that would start to creep up. So my aim was always that, if you get to British Olympic trials in 2016 or whatever, if you win the men's 1500 trial there, you should be in contention for a medal at the Olympics. That's the level we should be at as a competitive nation, which is exactly what it was in the 80s. Um, so I really believe that it's important to not just get that one person supported and look after them. In athletics, it's a numbers game, and you need 3 or 4 people in each event that are competing, at least that many, and at different levels of the pathway. And the goal was to get by 2020 Olympics was to have 3 to 4 Olympic medals in the endurance program that weren't anything to do with Mo Farah. That was the goal. That we would create a system that would be 3 to 4 medals every championships in the 20s. And so that's what we set out to do. And different programs went at different rates, and we've had ups and downs and all the rest of it. But when I see what's happening now in middle distance and for Britain, I just think it's amazing what we managed to achieve there. And I'm immensely proud of the guys there now and what they've done. I think it's incredible. But it did come from developing competitiveness within the program. But we also had lots of coaches working together, which again, if I go back in time, it was a reluctance of coaches to work together to share ideas, and we very much tried to create a community where people could go on training camp and trust the coach down the road to look after their athletes for 2 weeks, or not be on camp and trust the camp coach to look after them and not steal people's programs and all this kind of stuff. It was we kind of tried to create a philosophy where we're all in this together, and if you're better, I'll be better, and that kind of idea. So yeah, no, I think we made a huge push for that, and I think it's shown around about that 2021 area started to really pop through. There were signs of it in 2019, 3 men in the 1500-meter final, that type of thing. But yeah, when that year after COVID, we really started to see we've got people here in the program that are incredible, and I'd predict that we'll win probably 3 medals at least in Paris. I would hope so, but what I would say is there's enough numbers. Again, it's a numbers game. There's enough numbers competing at that top level that you should win medals. I think I used to work it out. It was something like for every medal, you needed something like 6 medal zone performances from your program. So you'd work it out and you go, well, if you want 3 medals, you need 3 times 6. It's like 18 medal zone performances. That's what we need. And last year, I think we had something like 26 medal zone performances across the program. I still track it because I'm interested. But it's a numbers game. It really is, and but unfortunately, I think UK athletics and UK sport, there's not a lot of money. London Marathon no longer put money into the endurance program directly. There's like 0 coaches employed by the federation. I think there's a chance that it tumbles, I think, but we'll see.
Really,
Hopefully
I was
not.
going to say, do you feel it important, very important for the federation to employ coaches, or do you see the system it is now? And you talk about coaches being together on training camps. I mean, you've only got to go to South Africa to see them all. They all seem to be friends. I mean, we're just from the outside, but what you wanted to set up there seems to be happening. So, do you see it important that people are employed by the federation?
Well, I think there's got to be some mechanism of paying coaches. I think, it's like everyone will pay for a physio and everyone will pay for a physiology test and a nutrition and whatever and S&C, but nobody pays for coaching. And let's be honest, like coaching's the key component. It really is. And I think it's hard to expect people to coach for nothing. Like, but then you'll say to them, well, I want you to be professional. It's like, but I've got to learn, I've got to go and do my job and then I'll try and do this. So I think it's a real issue. And I think it was an issue back in around the 2012 time as well. There was very, very few people that were being paid to coach. And when I came in, we employed a few coaches and we supported a number of coaches around the country. We didn't employ them, but we supported them that they would have at least some money that they could coach full time and find other mechanisms. And I just think I think it's really important, I would love to see more coaches employed. I would love to see that athletes and other people, they rank coaching as quite a high thing and are willing to pay for it. If you go to America, it's absolutely crazy to think you could be coached for free. Like that just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. But in Europe, it's not just the UK. It's a very amateur profession, in terms of the money, and I think it is massively important. If you've got athletes going away for 4 weeks in a training camp and you're doing your full-time job back in England, it's like it's hard to see how that's optimal. But yeah.
Do you think some of the onus got to be on the coaches? Like, Matt and I have this discussion all the time. Like, I think coaches are so used to probably when they were coached, it was from goodwill, so they kind of want to refuse
Yeah.
money. But it's almost like actually they need to start demanding money to kind of shift that culture.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it goes both ways, right? You know, I've seen many athletes try to pay their coach, and the coach says, "No, I don't want your money." And I'm like, "What?" It's meant to be a professional environment, and it's like, so when I finished up at British Athletics, I'd done a couple of years of coaching, and I would charge athletes, and I didn't even think twice about it. It was like because I knew if they went to America, they would be charged at least double what I would charge them.
Mhm.
But I also think when you pay a coach, you're asking for accountability as well. Then you're asking for people to have skin in the game with you. It's very easy if you're not getting paid to be like, oh yeah, whatever. Didn't really not to send a program through and forget about stuff. Whereas if you're billing somebody, you feel like you've got to make sure you get it done properly. So
Mm.
I, I think I think it does work both ways, and I think coaches have to be willing to get out there and market themselves as professional coaches. Again, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but I have a twin brother, Steve, who works in Lee Valley's professional sprints coach, and his entire program is built on people paying. And in the sprints world, that's pretty normal.
Mm.
Coaches coaches charge their athletes, but in endurance, yeah, it doesn't seem to follow through.
Mm.
So yeah, there needs to be a culture change for sure.
So when you talked about British athletics potentially, coming crumbling down or having that kind of peak and trough, definitely seems to be at a peak at the moment. You look at like you said, the 26 medal contenders or people in that medal zone you mentioned. But so what's changed since you left the role, and were there particular reasons why you left the role? Was it purely kind of financial? Um,
No, I mean, around that COVID period, it was a weird place to be honest.
yeah.
I, again, like, I'm not meant to talk about it or whatever, but I didn't want to leave, but I had to leave. And I think some of the people they brought in early in those early days were the wrong people. They weren't athletics people. They didn't know anything about the sport and went on to wreck it. If we're being honest, you know, losing the BBC deal, 5 million a year, losing the Birmingham Diamond League, no sponsors, nothing. I just think it decimated the sport. And now you've got Jack Buckner in and trying to piece it all together, and they don't have any money, unfortunately. And again, you gotta people have to understand that the lottery funding, they're probably getting less money now than they were in 2008, but everything costs 10 times more. So it's a very, very small operating budget in the world class plan now. And you really need outside funding to make it work. But British Athletics don't have that. They're struggling to just stay afloat as a federation. So I think there's been some bad decisions made by certain people along the way, and I think they're in a bad place. I mean, I think if you just watch it on the TV and you think, wow, like we've got some incredible athletes, incredible talent, um, but I honestly think that that's gonna be affected in the next generation because this support that these people have had is not there now, for people coming through, and I think. And again, maybe the onus is on athletes to find their own support. Maybe it's up to them to. But it's very hard if you're not one of the top athletes. It's very hard to get money and sponsorship and race appearances. You've got to be the top people. So the people that really need it won't get it, unfortunately. So I think what will start to erode is that depth that's there in the pathway, and we'll go back to you know, a dozen people that are supported across the program, and that's it. That's what we'll end up with probably in 4 years' time. But let's see, you know, maybe Jack and the other guys there will pull off a big deal, and then suddenly the sport is revived again, you know. But
Mm.
yeah, we'll see. I really hope it is. I really hope it starts to come back because I care a lot about it. But
Yeah, it's
yeah, I
funny.
worry.
It's funny because you compare that to, I don't know if you have inside info on other federations as well. Obviously, you've got links to Qatar at the moment, but you look at nations like France, and I think them just having Paris around the corner. You look at how many athletes they have competing in the top percentage of the world now. Several of their
Yeah,
athletes are smashing those Olympic qualifying standards, aren't they? Which, a few years ago were, seen as obscene.
yeah. I mean, look, France didn't win any medals last year at the World Championships, you know, and I was looking at that going, that's crazy. They're going to their home Olympics and they literally had no medals. Like if I was them, I'd be panicking big time. Um, But like just going on the Europe thing, I've done a few talks over the last 6 months, and I went to Denmark and talked at the European Athletics Conference, and then I spoke in Germany at their conference, and I just recently spoke in Poland at their conference, and I get all about altitude training and
Mm.
whatever. If no one has any money, all the federations in Europe are struggling big time. But the one thing I'll say is they all employ coaches, so they're still giving money to coaches, but they're decimated as well. There's no money. Like it's a really tough sell now for these organizations to get money in. Um, and if you go to other federations, Olympic sports in the UK, they've always struggled. One
Mm.
of the things athletics had in the past was that other Olympic sports didn't was it wasn't just every 4 years. Everyone will watch the rowing every 4 years, but they'll never watch the rowing world championships in between.
Mm.
But athletics used to have this thing where people were interested in the World Championships that year and the European Championships that year, and the Diamond League series. But I think it's fading. It's heading the way other sports are. I was sitting with Charlie Grice watching the I think it was the Rabat Diamond League last
Yeah.
week, and there was literally like when you watch it on YouTube and you can see the number of viewers, it was like I think the maximum was 1,400 viewers. you know. And Charlie was putting stuff out on Instagram, like
Yeah.
what's going on, how do we revive the sport and all this kind of stuff. But you're looking at it going like, what sponsor is going to invest into a sport where you've got 1,400 people on YouTube? Like,
Mm.
and I know like different areas have it on TV and so on, so it's not the overall thing, but it's like you're going globally, there's only 1,400 people watching this. Like, and then you're going to go and ask somebody to invest in your sport. It's like, don't know. So I think there's some big challenges, and I think World Athletics, and I think they are doing this from what, when I talk to people, they have to find a way to make the sport attractive to people again. Um, they have to get investment that they're getting down to the grassroots of the sport too, and it doesn't just stay in Monaco. It's got to be the money's
Mm.
got to be spread around so that federations can survive. Um, but yeah, but then you
Yeah.
then
I
you
think.
come to a place like Qatar or Saudi, and it is money's not the issue. It's expertise and talent that's the issue.
Mm.
So
It's
it's
weird
a
because
different
I
game.
think we look at the sport and we go, how can we get money to athletes? Athletes aren't getting paid enough. We need more money to athletes. But, from what you're saying on this podcast, governing bodies need a lot more money as well. And that's probably the bigger issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sport just generally needs more money is a way of putting it. Because if coaches don't get money, they don't get paid, and they have to go and get a job. If athletes don't get money, they can't be full time. If federations don't get money, they can't put the infrastructure that's in place to make the Olympics function, for example. So I think everyone involved is cash strapped and looking at it going, right, how do we do it? But I'll come back to this idea that again, people forget this, but running's one of the biggest sports in the world, biggest participation sport in the world. So there's a lot of money involved. It's just like, where's it going? You run London Marathon, and then they invest into the sport, which is great, but how much money they make every year.
Mm.
And I'm kind of like, why doesn't British athletics, have their own race or something like that? Like, is there
Yep.
something the federations can do for themselves that provides an income other than a diamond league? Because running is humongous. It's huge. It's the biggest sport in the world.
Mm.
So it's hard to get your head around. Why is there so little money when it literally is the biggest sport on the planet? So yeah, I mean, I think there's ways to do it, and I think getting the right people on board, which I think it sounds like UK Athletics are doing because they're now on board with London Marathon and Great North Run and this new initiative that they've got going on. And hopefully that will generate some positive conversations between them all about how do they really help athletics in this country and get it moving.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely, and we definitely hope that kind of that can continue the strength we have right now, and that's what we wanted to ask you about as well. Is who on that British team at the moment excites you the most? Because as you mentioned, we've got kind of a host of talent in the endurance events.
Yeah, I mean, look, just looking at the endurance program, I mean, I watched Josh the other day in Eugene and I just thought that was phenomenal. He's so confident and so strong, and I think you could almost run the race whichever way he wanted and he would have won it. He could have gone slow and he would have outkicked everyone. Um, So I think Josh for me at the minute is very exciting, and I think he's very, very close now to winning that Olympic gold medal. But I wouldn't discount the other lads that are there. Jake Wyman's going to come good come August. Neil Gurley's going to come down that home straight at some point and go past people. And then in the women's 800, I think Keely is phenomenal too. I think she has a chance of at least winning a medal, if not the gold, if she gets it right on the day. And I think Gemma was kind of the one that went under the radar in Eugene, but she ran a brilliant race as well. And I think if she can just continue to improve over the season, I think she'll be like she was in Tokyo. She'll be right in the mix for a medal there come Paris. And then of course you've got everyone else. You've got Laura Muir and you know Katie Snowden and Millie Courtney running 3:57 last year is incredible. And then in the men's eight, you've got Ben Pattison and you've got a load of guys there. Daniel and maybe Elliot will run the eight this year. I don't know, but I think again sometimes the 800 at champs can be a bit of a lottery, to be honest, about who gets through and who doesn't. So yeah, no, I think the sport, if you just look at it right now, as I say, it looks fantastic. Having a bit more insight into it, I do worry that the foundations are eroding that will support that in the future. But yeah, I mean, I think this Olympics, if you're an endurance fan in Britain, will be fantastic. We've got three guys running under 13 minutes for 5K. Like, when's that ever happened?
Yeah.
And I know the shoes and all that kind of stuff, but and you look at the marathon too, in the men's marathon, we've got three guys that are running under 208, 209, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal time to watch it.
I think, yeah.
It's great.
It is, man. I think we haven't touched too much on the physiology of the sport and stuff, but you have done a lot of research. You mentioned in altitude as well, but interestingly, I read about you did quite a lot of work with tapering as well, and I'm quite intrigued how to. I think this is where quite a few athletes struggle, and you've probably
Get
seen
it
it
wrong.
time and time again. How do you get it right? And so, from your expertise and what you've discovered over the years at looking at the best and how they turn up on race day in tip-top form, how do they go about
Yeah.
it?
So look, I think that the first thing is just meticulous planning, and being really clear about what's your number one race. I think a lot of people will try and taper twice because they've got to do the trials and then the championships, or they might even do like they come out early in April and then they don't run trials. So they've got three kind of things, and I think it can get really messy quite quick if you're just not really clear about what's the number one thing we're trying to do here. Um, so I think that's number one. I think you've got to really plan well. You've probably got to make some mistakes at some point so that you can learn. Like I think that's just life, right? But again, if you're coming through an experienced group or you have an experienced mentor or whatever that has done it before, then that obviously helps massively. My experience in Kenya and Ethiopia was that basically the guys do a big workout 10 days before, and they don't do any hard workouts after that. They'll do a workout, but it won't be hard. And so they'll start cutting from 10 days out. And that's distance athletes. It might be 8 days in a 800, 1,500 meter type athlete. And yeah, so we done quite a bit of tapering. I had a PhD student in Loughborough, Kate Spilsbury, and we done quite a lot of work actually. Kate, she done great. Lots of research around actual athletes in Loughborough doing different types of tapers, and we looked at different. We published some of the training programs that I had from Kenya and how they were doing it, and we done like a survey in the UK as well about how British coaches were doing it. So we were getting a feel for how different people were doing it, and we used that to try and formulate some tests to see if we could improve the current sort of tapering that people do. And we didn't really get a performance improvement, but we learned a lot about different people and how they respond to tapers. I think most people just do too much or too little, as it might go. But I think a lot of people hit it too hard and then hit it again, and then because there's a natural thing that people just panic going into a big one, that they haven't done enough. But it's hard to sit in your hands for 10 days. You do your big workout and then you just kind of sit there going, is this the right thing to do? I don't know. I don't know. But 10 days is about right in a distance athlete, because that's broadly how long it will take for somebody who's doing 100 mile plus a week running and sessions will take for their body just to bring through all that adaptation and get rid of the fatigue. Um, yeah, it's tough. Like, but you probably just need to learn a bit about it, but you need to probably make a mistake or two, or you need to speak to people that have done it before and been successful.
Mm.
Um, even with somebody like Mo, I don't think we got it perfect every time. I think maybe I'm thinking like 2013. I think he was maybe a little bit overcooked coming into Moscow. That last race, the 5K, he didn't feel strong at all. He actually, with a K to go, he realized he wasn't going to run 52 for the last lap, so he pushed the pace on. If you watch the race, you can see him go to the front, which is really unusual for him, but he felt that he wasn't quite there. So I think he probably a bit overcooked then. Trying to think, he's probably his best ever year was 2015, and that was we were almost like forced into a proper taper because of traveling. We were in Japan, traveling to China. So we had a bit more downtime than we would have had normally, travel days and so on. But yeah, I think it's a skill that people learn and they figure it out. And I think it's worth just saying to your listeners and you as well. Like, I think there's a common misconception that these guys stand in the start line and feel great every time. The reality is they don't. Um, I used to say, like, if you watch somebody do a warm up and they come back and say that's the best warm up I've ever done, it's like I'd start to worry then. Because actually, what really should be happening at a big race is you've been tapering and you're feeling a bit, ugh, you're not feeling 100%, and that's what the warm up's for. So actually having a normal warm up or feeling a bit crap I'll be like, brilliant. I'll take that any day of the week. And yeah, like I think again, it's a misconception that elites or whoever wins is standing there thinking I'm on the perfect day and I'm this and I'm that. No, most of them are standing there going, bloody hell, I'm sore and I'm heavy legged, and then their gun goes off and away they go.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, like I think there's a multitude of things. Like, I used to talk a lot about, again, going back a few years, but I used to talk about own the start line. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase, but I used to talk about um so if I go back to Bikili, one of the things he was doing was when that race, that training session that I was talking about was race simulation. So he was like, I'm basically doing what I need to do in the last lap. So I'm ticking that off. My body weight's down to a certain level. I'm ticking that off. My running volume is at a certain level. I can tick that off. So on and so on. And he would mentally get his head into a place 10 days out, 9 days out, that when he got to the race, that he was like unquestionably going to win because he'd done everything to prepare. And I kind of learned a bit off that, and I started to use this thing called own the start line in Britain, where it was like, right, imagine you are going to be like, just, you could do it with yourself now. It's like, imagine you're going to be in Paris on the start line of the 1500-meter final. Like, you got to say to yourself, what would I have needed to have done to be fully confident and feel like I can beat everyone here?
Mm.
And that was always the process I would go through with people. Who would be like, what would you actually have to do? And that came from conversation I had with a British athlete who will remain nameless in a major championships, who stood in the start line and told me afterwards that he just basically looked up and down the start line and didn't believe he was going to win because everyone had done more miles than him. Everyone had done more training sessions and somebody had better shoes or whatever. It was like, so I really tried to instill this kind of thing. It's like, what would you have to do? And so actually, when you're standing on the start line, you're able to go tick, 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 tick. I've done that, and I know I'm better than everyone else, and I can do it. And certainly, when Mo stood in the start line, he believed he was just going to kill everyone. There was no doubt in his mind that he was going to win. He would never sit there going, "Shit, I've only done 90 miles last week." Like, it wouldn't even enter his mind, because we would go through that preparation, and it would include the taper, and it would include every component that you needed to do, so that you literally stand there and it's unquestionable. Like, I'm better than all these guys. I've done everything. So, and I think that mindset, and I think that's what Josh done at the weekend in Eugene.
Mm.
I think he literally stood there and was like, whatever you throw at me, I'll do.
Mm.
Like, I'll do it, because he's ticked everything off. He knows exactly what he's doing. And now he's got Jacob on the run, which I think is fantastic. Like, I can't wait to see the next one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. That's some great advice for people there, and yeah, definitely we are too excited to see kind of how Jakob and Josh Coe go at it this summer. But Barry, thanks so much for chatting to us today. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, it's good. Hopefully, it didn't going too much about rubbish.